apartment in Loutraki is located a few hundred meters from a beach with the most beautiful water. Loutraki is located just northeast of Corinth, so our first goal was to see the Corinth Canal. It was opened in 1893 and is 6.3 kilometers long, 21 meters wide, and the water is 8 meters deep. The sides are 80 meters high in some places. Nowadays the canal has become too small for large ships, but we saw several minor ships passing through.
Helt sikkert, når der ikke er nogen mennesker. Det er det big boy. Tror de ikke
Kan I se, hvor fint tovværket det ligger rullet sammen dernede?
Jo, det er rigtigt.
Meget tror jeg lige sådan en ski koster.
One of the bridges over the canal is lowered into the water when a ship passes and is raised again afterwards. Before the canal, ships were towed across the isthmus to save the long sea voyage around Peloponnese. In the 500s before Christ, a trace of marble was constructed. It is called Diakofto and can still be seen. It has been used for 1500 years. The ships were emptied of cargo, towed to shore, and lifted onto a wagon which was towed over the land. Over the years, Corinth has made a lot of money on that traffic. Now we went to the ancient Corinth, where the 6-meter-high columns from the temple of Apollo still stand. They are in Doric style, and they are monoliths. They are made of one stone instead of several drums on top of each other. In ancient times, Corinth was an important and rich city-state with several colonies, for example Syracuse in Sicily. Most of the time, Corinth was in association with Sparta. From Corinth we know the Corinthian columns. The city resisted fiercely against the Romans, but was completely destroyed by them in the year 146 BC. 100 years later, the Romans founded a new city on the site, and Corinth became the center of early Christianity in the country due to Paul's visit and letters. Behind the city lies the 575-meter-high mountain Acrocorinth, where in ancient times there was an Aphrodite temple with religious prostitution in honor of Aphrodite. Here are mosaics from the Roman history of the city. Osios Patapios is a monastery located 700 meters above sea level near Loutraki, and from here there is a breathtaking view. Further out on the peninsula there is a lake, and it all ends in Cape Ireon with remnants of a Hera temple and a lighthouse. Already in the Bronze Age, Mycenae was an important place. The ruins of the royal seat date back to 1600 before Christ. The first thing you encounter is the Lion Gate, which was the entrance to the stronghold. The lion's muscles are beautifully shaped, but the heads are missing. They were probably made of metal. The doorposts are over 3 meters high, and the bar is 4.5 meters long. Between the lions is a pillar that is widest at the top. The same style is known from the Minoan culture in Crete. Inside the gate you see the so-called grave circle A. B is outside the area. Inside the circles are some square shaft graves where the ancient kings were buried. Perhaps this also applies to Agamemnon, who was involved in the Trojan War. In these tombs a total of 9 gold face masks were found, now housed in the Museum of Athens. The stronghold was fortified by meter-thick walls, and at the back there is a deep and steep gorge. The shaft graves were eventually replaced by dome tombs, the most well-known being Atreus' treasury from about 1300 BC. The largest stone at the entrance is 9 meters long and weighs 118 tons. The dome has a diameter of 14 meters. Epidaurus is known for its magnificent ancient theatre from the 4th century BC. It seats 14,000 spectators in 55 rows and has a unique acoustics. Following Greek custom, there is no wall behind the stage, but instead there is a breathtaking view.
Hello to the friends that I know, tell them I'll soon be there. They'll be happy to know when you saw me go, I was singing this song. We'll meet again, don't know where, I don't know where. All I know, we'll meet again, some sunny day.
There may come a lot of water when it rains, so drains are arranged around the orchestra, which is the round area in the middle. In ancient times, Epidaurus was a very important health center where people came to be healed with the help of the god of medicine Asclepius, depicted with a snake swirling up on a cane. A short distance from the theatre there is a large area where the sick have stayed and have been treated. It was the money from the health center that was used to build the theatre. On our trip to Delphi along the north coast of the Peloponnese, we made a stop in Diakofto to take the mountain railway, which at 22 kilometers rises 700 meters. We drove on a shelf carved into the mountain and on bridges over steep canyons. Some people put their lives at risk by walking on the rails. A very nice bridge has been built between Rion and Antirion.
Det ser ud som sådan nogle tynde tråde langt væk fra, men de er jo bare sådan mega tykke.
We came to Delphi in the evening and were able to enjoy this beautiful view. Delphi lies on the mountain of Parnassus. There used to be a newer city on top of the ancient shrine, so when the French archaeologists were going to do the excavation, they had to start by moving the whole city. Here is a reconstruction of ancient Delphi. One of the first things you encounter at the entrance is the Agora, a trading center from Roman times, so it is younger than the other ruins. To be told a fortune in the oracle, one would have to be washed in holy water and walk the holy path up the mountain until one came to the temple. On the way they passed the so-called treasury houses. They were beautiful houses with gifts for Apollo, which various city-states had built. The Athens treasury house could almost be re-erected from the blocks that were scattered on the ground. Further up is a wall supporting the temple even further up. The stones are incredibly beautifully cut to fit each other. On some of them there are various inscriptions, for example about the release of the slaves. This snake pillar is a copy. The original is in Istanbul. It was erected in memory of the victory over the Persians at Plataea, north of Corinth. Each snake represents one of the city-states that participated in the battle. It was inside the temple of Apollo that the female Pythia delivered the oracle answers. She sat on a tripod behind a blanket, and on the other side sat the priests who translated her response. Approximately 600 oracle answers have been preserved. Nearby stood the Omphalos stone, the navel of the world, which is restored and placed in the museum. The Apollo temple was built in the 4th century BC. Above the temple is a theater which seats 5,000 spectators in 35 rows. The round orchestra in the center is 18 meters in diameter. Again, there is a free and breathtaking view. Around the orchestra there are drains for collecting rainwater. The water could run in this drain. Even further up to the northwest of the theater, we find the stadium which was used for the Pythian Games. The games, which from 582 BC took place every 4 years, were held in Apollon's honor and included both sports and music competitions. There were 3 entrances with walls. And here we have the referee bench. From the stadium we can look down at the gymnasium, which is on the other side of the road. Here there has been a wrestling ground, swimming pool and a running track. Even further down you will find Athena Pronaia, a temple area which you in the old days would meet before reaching the temple of Apollo. Here are remnants of a round temple, a tholos, that may have been used to worship the god of medicine Asclepius. At the entrance to the museum there are some mosaics from the 5th century AD. Up here on a pillar there has been a sphinx, which now is in the museum. The Siphnian treasury was the most beautiful one in Delphi, but there isn't much left of the building anymore. In the museum, however, there are several sculptures and friezes from the building. 2 of the pillars were replaced by female statues, caryatids. On the pediment to the east was this frieze, showing how Heracles is trying to steal the tripod from Pythia. He was angry that he couldn't be predicted. On the frieze below we have the gods Ares, Aphrodite, Artemis, Apollo and Zeus. On this frieze the gods fight the giants. This is an Apollo statue made of gold and ivory. The ivory has turned black. This bull is made of silver-plated copper. It was probably fixed to a wooden skeleton. Forehead, horns, hooves and testicles are gilded. The charioteer is a 180 centimeter high bronze figure which is from 470 before Christ and which was saved by an earthquake. It was buried behind a retaining wall north of the Temple of Apollo, where it was found in 1896. The fine folds in the tunic are resembling the fluting of an Ionic column. On the upper body the folds are more random. The charioteer was part of a larger statue with a chariot drawn by 4 horses, and the statue depicts the winner of the Pythian games in Delphi. Here is an interpretation of the statue in which the boy holds the rein from the horses. On our way back we visited the monastery Osios Loukas, which is from the Byzantine era. It is included in the UNESCO's World Heritage List and is famous for its fine mosaics in the church. It was started by the holy monk Loukas, known as a healer and living in the 900s. In the monastery there are 2 churches right next to each other. The main dome in this church is decorated with a mural dating from the 17th century. Christ is surrounded by saints and angels. It replaces some mosaics that had fallen down. The next day we took the train to Athens to see the Acropolis. We used the entrance to the south, where the first one meets is the Dionysus Theatre, which is in Greek style with no wall behind the stage. Here men and boys dressed in goatskin performed with song, dance and music in honor of the god Dionysus. The best seats were for the priests. If the piece was good, the audience threw fruits, figs at the actors. If bad, they threw stones. Further along the foot of the Acropolis is the Herod Atticus Odeon, a Roman theatre. It was built in 174 AD, and unlike a Greek theatre, there is a high back wall, a roof and no view. It is still used for concerts and festivals. The propylaea was built from 437 to 432 BC in Doric style. It should make visitors feel small compared to the mighty gods of the Acropolis. Through the middle gate runs a ramp where you could drag up sacrificial animals, but it was hard to see for the many tourists. From the back you can clearly see the Doric elements, triglyphs, metopes and pediment. From the entrance you can see the Areopagus cliff. Here was the court of Athens in antiquity. It had 150 members and was judging in murder and political cases. The consul also monitored the legislation. In the year 51 AD, the Apostle Paul visited the rock and gave a speech. The contents can be read in the Acts of the Apostles. You can also look over to Pnyx, where democracy was born. Here all Athenians over the age of 20 met 40 times a year to discuss, however only men and no slaves. At least 6,000 citizens came, and a general assembly lasted a few hours. After the debate, people voted by raising their hands. At the entrance you can also look up to the Nike temple, which was the smallest temple on the Acropolis. It was erected in memory of the victory over the Persians and in honor of Nike. In 1686 the Turks leveled the ground and placed a cannon post on the rubble. The remains were later used for the restoration. The temple is in Ionic style with volutes and a coherent frieze. On the north side of the Acropolis lies Erectaion. 6 female figures act as pillars, caryatids. The dresses hang in soft folds and one leg is pushed slightly forward. They are copies. 5 of the original ones are in the Acropolis Museum. The last one is in the British Museum in London. According to the legend, Poseidon and Athena fought to become god of the city of Athens. Poseidon thrust his trident into the ground, and up came a spring of salt water. Athena offered an olive tree instead and won. In memory of this, there still is an olive tree outside the building. And at the back there is a hole in both roof and floor in memory of Poseidon's trident. The most famous building on the Acropolis is the Parthenon. Countless tricks have been used here to make it look as elegant as possible. The columns are pointed, they tilt slightly inward, and they are slightly thicker in the middle. Furthermore, the distances between the columns are not equal. The base bends slightly upwards, which is also intentional. Inside was an 11-meter-high gold-plated statue of Athena. After the Christians removed some statues to use the temple as a church, the Turks used it as a gunpowder store and the Venetians bombed it, so it was greatly damaged. Now it is under constant restoration. The decoration of the metopes was removed by the English Lord Elgin in the 19th century and is at the British Museum. The same goes for the long Ionic frieze that was above the inside pillars. There has also been decorations in the pediment. From Acropolis you have a great view of Athens, which has 3.7 million inhabitants. In the distance is the Lycabettus hill, which is 277 meters high. There is a ropeway up to it. One can also look down at Agora, which was the marketplace of the antiquity and the center of political and cultural life. Here is the temple of Hephaestus, which is the best preserved temple in Greece. It is consecrated to Hephaestus, the god of blacksmiths, and it is a typical Doric temple. The Tower of the Winds is of marble. It was built in the Roman period, approximately 125 AD. It was a meteorological station which also could measure time using a complicated water clock. And finally, to the east you can see the remains of a huge Zeus temple, which was 41 times 107 meters. It was first completed 700 years after it was started, and ended up being built in Corinthian style. That happened under the Roman Emperor Hadrian. There were a total of 104 columns at almost 17 meters in height. The weight of these columns is 15,550 tons, 4 times as much as the columns of the Parthenon weigh. Hadrian also built an arch that worked as a gate building. It stands at the entrance to the new Roman quarter with the Temple of Zeus. Outside lay the old Greek district with Acropolis. The Acropolis Museum opened in 2009. Here you will find a Lego model of the Acropolis. In the Parthenon you can see the 11-meter-high gilded statue of Athena. And otherwise there are reproductions of the works of art that have been on metopes, friezes, and as here in the western pediment. Here is the Battle of Athens between Poseidon and Athena. In the eastern pediment the birth of Athena appears. Metis was pregnant with Athena, but when Zeus swallowed Metis, the embryo grew further in his head. The god of blacksmiths Hephaestus had to cleave Zeus's head with an axe, and Athena burst out of his forehead in full armor. The long frieze inside the Parthenon shows the procession of citizens to the 4-annual celebration of Athena. Most were on horseback. The original is in the British Museum. The metopes show the battles between centaurs and lapids. Here too the originals are in London. The museum also shows 5 of the 6 original caryatids. The last one is in London. Syntagma Square is in the center of Athens. The guards honor the grave of the unknown soldier. Although it was autumn, we saw both crocus, ecabilium, and cyclamen. And then there was harvest time for cotton. Greece makes 76% of EU's cotton production.